In 1878, the sun rose over the dusty town of Grayson, Kansas, illuminating the simple life that played out on its dirt streets. Among the townsfolk was Lila Grant, a young seamstress whose life had been marked by loss and challenge. Orphaned at a tender age, she learned early on the necessity of resilience. With her needle and thread, she crafted beautiful garments for the townspeople, pouring her heart into every stitch. Yet, her tight-knit community often turned a blind eye to her talent, fixating instead on what made her different. Lila walked with a limp from polio, a condition that had plagued her since childhood. It affected not just her movement but also how others perceived her. As she navigated the bustling marketplace, whispers trailed behind her like shadows. "Look at that poor girl," some would say. Others would chuckle lightly or turn their heads away in discomfort. For Lila, those scornful glances felt like arrows piercing her heart. Despite these challenges, Lila found solace in her art. The soft sound of fabric rustling against itself was comforting, like a friend who understood her struggles without needing words. Each morning as she opened the door to her modest sewing shop, she filled it with the hope of creating something beautiful. She often imagined what it might be like to escape Grayson and explore distant towns filled with understanding people who would appreciate her skills. As Lila spent long hours sewing delicate patterns and crafting elegant dresses, which hung proudly in her shop window, she often caught herself dreaming about being part of something larger, a community willing to accept her as she was without judgment. However, reality would soon come crashing down during the county fair's annual shooting contest. The fair was normally a celebration of local talent and agricultural prizes. It transformed Grayson into a lively spectacle under colorful banners and tents filled with laughter and chatter. But for Lila, it felt like an inevitable stage for ridicule, a chance for every naysayer to gather and gawk. Still, she decided to attend that year with an unexpected spark of courage. Wearing one of the dresses she had made herself, a deep blue fabric that brought out the color of her eyes, Lila watched the commotion from a distance. She admired the sharp crack of rifles firing at distant targets while revelers cheered for their favorites. They laughed and screamed for their friends as they took turns at impressing crowds with their skill and precision. Deep inside, Lila wished she could join them in jubilation rather than remain an outsider on the fringes. As fate would have it, during one particularly boisterous moment at the competition, an unexpected commotion drew everyone's attention toward Lila. In a split second, she felt her foot slip on uneven ground as laughter echoed nearby. Tripping awkwardly in front of hundreds of eyes, time seemed to slow down while crimson embarrassment washed over her face. A hush fell across the crowd, followed by snickers that grew louder. Disparaging remarks about her leg began slipping through clenched teeth. Lila stared at the ground in shame as whispers rippled through the crowd like waves crashing against rocks. Some people covered their smiles with hands while others sneered openly. Her heart sank deeper with each word until she felt invisible, a shadow among vivid colors meant to uplift joy. But then everything changed when Jonah McCrae stepped forward from amidst the throng of ridicule. Known around town as Deadeye, he was a one-eyed sharpshooter whose quiet demeanor belied impressive marksmanship earned during his years in battle. Instead of laughing like everyone else around him, Jonah approached Lila calmly and respectfully. He didn't speak loudly. Instead, he leaned close enough for only her to hear his murmured words, "You're not alone." Then he quietly bowed before offering his silver medal, the prize for winning his round, to Lila, with sincerity lighting up his face like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. For once in Grayson's marketplace, where laughter had echoed mockingly towards Lila's struggle, an act of kindness replaced cruelty in an instant. Jonah stood tall beside Lila like a guardian angel amid darkened spirits. Suddenly she felt weightless within all that emotional heaviness pressing down on her. As murmurs resumed throughout the crowd, their whispers shifting from laughter into bitterness, Lila lifted her gaze towards Jonah's kind eyes, shining with understanding rather than pity or judgment. They sparked warmth within those frozen recesses where dreams always lingered, hope alive yet unfulfilled. In the small town of Grayson, Kansas, where everyone knew each other's names and shared the same dusty roads, Lila Grant stood out in ways that both defined her and isolated her. Her limp, a reminder of polio from her childhood, was not just a physical challenge. It became a focal point for the townsfolk's disdain. The close-knit community thrived on gossip and judgment, often making Lila the subject of their scornful conversations. As Lila walked through the marketplace, she could feel the weight of their stares. Some would nod politely, but others whispered behind their hands, their words sharp as knives. "There goes that poor girl," they would say, "or she'll never amount to anything." Such remarks felt like cold rain on a summer day, unwanted and chilling. Even children, innocent as they were, would point and snicker at her gait. To them, she was an oddity. To Lila, they were constant reminders of her difference. The ridicule did not end with mere whispers. It seeped into every corner of her life. When she ventured to sell her handmade dresses, there were always those who turned up their noses at her work simply because of who she was. Though many admired the vibrant colors and intricate stitching, the acclaim was often accompanied by a hesitance to be seen with her in public. Lila learned quickly that talent could not erase prejudice. Her skill as a seamstress only seemed to amplify their derision and cruelty. During social gatherings like church services or town meetings, Lila would sit quietly at the back of the room. She longed to join in on lively conversations, but found herself too self-conscious to speak up. Those around her seemed to glide effortlessly through life, while she felt trapped in a heavy fog of isolation. The laughter that echoed around her felt foreign. It was a sound that reminded her she was an outsider looking in. Her sewing shop became both a sanctuary and prison at once. Within its walls, she felt safe among the bolts of fabric and spools of thread, a world where she controlled the narrative. Here, she poured her heart into crafting garments that made others feel beautiful. Yet outside those four walls lingered whispers about an awkward girl with a crooked walk and darkened past. The county fair brought this tension to a boiling point each year. It was meant to be a celebration filled with games and laughter, but for Lila, it felt more like a stage set for mockery. As colorful banners danced in the breeze and music filled the air with joy, Lila often hesitated before stepping through the gates. She knew that entering meant inviting judgment from all sides, a chance for others to gather like vultures waiting for prey. On this particular fair day, as Lila stood at the edge of the crowd watching families celebrate together, she felt an ache deep within her chest. Children ran past her with showy ribbons in their hair, while cheerful voices rang out from everywhere. She wished to be part of that gleeful noise, but feared what might happen if she took one step forward. The thought alone was enough to keep her frozen in place. When contestants began taking turns at the shooting contest, the main attraction of the event, Lila watched intently from afar. Each gunshot sparked applause from gathered spectators while cheers erupted for skilled marksmen showing off their talents. Yet, even amidst such excitement, there was no comfort for Lila. Instead, anxiety gripped her heart tightly, as if warning that any movement might end in disaster. Then came that fateful moment when laughter erupted unexpectedly from behind her, a sound so cruel it shattered whatever fragile confidence had been built inside. Turning suddenly to see what had caused it resulted in stumbling forward onto uneven ground and landing unceremoniously before hundreds of eyes, her body spilling onto dirt just as quickly as dignity fled. Humiliation washed over her face like hot coals as jeers echoed around. Whispers morphed into full-throated laughter as Lila fought against tears brimming at the corners of her eyes, each mocking word ripping through layers of hope still lingering somewhere deep inside. In this painful instant marked by exposure before all those who'd ever judged or shunned her, it seemed too much to bear until fate intervened, with Jonah McCrae's presence breaking apart those dark clouds looming above. The county fair was an annual highlight in Grayson, Kansas, a day when the town transformed into a tapestry of color and laughter. The air buzzed with excitement, filled with the sweet scent of cotton candy and roasted corn. Brightly colored stalls lined the main street, each one beckoning townsfolk to partake in thrilling games or sample delightful treats. Children dashed around with ribbons in their hair, their laughter ringing like music against the backdrop of cheerful chatter. For many, it was a day of joy, an opportunity to celebrate community spirit and connect with friends. However, for Lila Grant, the fair was more a source of dread than delight. As she stood at the edge of the festivities, her heart raced with a mixture of wonder and anxiety. The vibrant sights and sounds enveloped her like a whirlwind, pulling her in while simultaneously raising walls around her heart. Dressed in one of her own creations, a deep blue dress that complemented her eyes, Lila felt both proud and exposed. While she loved showcasing her work, knowing that perhaps someone might appreciate her talent, the fear of judgment loomed larger than any thread she had woven into fabric. With every step she took towards the bustling scene, doubt crept into her mind like shadows on a cloudy day. Lila watched from a distance as families gathered around booths, their faces alight with happiness as they played games or engaged in friendly competitions. The sounds of laughter mixed with the crack of gunfire from the shooting contest at the far end of the fairgrounds reverberated through her chest. Each cheer from spectators celebrating skilled shots both thrilled and rattled her. She longed to join them, but feared being the subject of laughter instead. As she paced nervously near the edge of the festivities, Lila's thoughts spiraled into a torrent of worry. What if she stumbled? What if someone made fun of her again? The echoes of past ridicule still haunted her, each mocking whisper felt etched into her memory. She wished to be part of that joyful scene but felt tethered by invisible chains made out of unshed tears and years spent being judged. Nearby, children squealed with glee as they tried to win prizes at various booths. The sight sent a pang through Lila's heart. How she wished for carefree moments like those. Her mind flickered back to memories when laughter felt genuine and not laced with cruelty. Still, now it seemed impossible to shake off those feelings of isolation. As she stood by a booth where local farmers showcased their best produce, Lila gazed enviously at families sharing warm embraces and encouraging words. Their joyful interactions only deepened her sense of exclusion. People moved freely from one stall to another without hesitation or fear. Each person seemed ablaze with confidence, while she felt like a ghost drifting through solid worlds. Still clinging to hope, Lila resolved to take just one step closer to join in on the festivities' vibrant energy. She took a deep breath before moving towards an area where children were tossing balls towards stacked cans in hopes of toppling them over, a game that always drew cheers from delighted onlookers. But as she approached the crowd, reality quickly caught up with her. The ground beneath her feet felt uneven. Nerves tightened within her stomach as anxiety bubbled up once more. Suddenly overwhelmed by fear and embarrassment at being so exposed among all these judging eyes, Lila hesitated. The moment stretched endlessly as laughter erupted nearby. It was as if everyone knew how precarious this moment was for her. Heart pounding loudly against her ribcage, she decided to retreat slightly, to observe rather than participate, hiding behind makeshift booths that offered scant cover from prying eyes. Yet even as Lila stood back in an attempt to shield herself from potential mockery, something inside urged her to be brave, to step forward into this lively world rather than remain hidden in shadows. Just then, a sudden loud cheer erupted from the shooting contest area. It drew attention away from Lila momentarily as everyone directed their focus toward what was happening there. For that fleeting moment, it felt as though time had stopped. She could breathe again amidst the chaos. But it didn't last long before fate would thrust her into the spotlight yet again. As the shooting contest reached its peak, excitement crackled in the air like electricity. The cheers of the crowd created a playful symphony, blending with the sharp report of rifles. Lila stood at the edge of the competition area, her heart racing as she watched skilled marksmen take aim. Though she longed to feel part of it all, her thoughts were clouded by a sense of dread that weighed heavily on her shoulders. The laughter and applause echoed around her like reminders that she was alone in this sea of camaraderie. Despite her anxiety, an urge to partake in the festivities tugged at her heartstrings. Lila took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and decided to move closer to the action, hoping to find a corner where she could observe without feeling too exposed. She stepped forward cautiously, attempting to keep her head high and deflect any judgmental stares that might come her way. But just as Lila crossed into the thrumming energy of the crowd, disaster struck. Her foot caught on an uneven patch of earth, hidden beneath a thick layer of grass that had sprung up after weeks without rain. In a split second, she lost her balance and felt herself tumbling forward, helpless against the force of gravity. Time slowed as she spiraled into a world where embarrassment turned every heartbeat into a drumroll of impending doom. As she hit the ground with a soft thud, silence enveloped her for a heartbeat, only to be shattered by laughter that rolled through the crowd like an unruly tide. Lila felt heat rush to her cheeks. Humiliation washed over her like a crashing wave, pulling her down into despair. People turned to look, some pointing openly while others snickered behind hands clasped at grinning mouths. She wanted nothing more than to disappear, to sink into the earth and escape their cruel gaze. Lila lay still for a moment, staring at the ground beneath her, willing herself to dissolve into it. Each mocking laugh seemed amplified in her mind. Whispers floated through the air like arrows aimed straight at her heart. "Look at that poor girl," someone said. "She can't even walk right." Others chimed in with similar remarks that cut deeper than any arrow ever could. The world around her spun with confusion and despair. Lila's head spun as if caught in a whirlpool of emotion and anguish. She could feel tears pooling in her eyes, but fought them back fiercely. Crying would only provide more fuel for their mockery. For every taunt she heard, the echoes of hurtful words replaying in an unending cycle, she craved acceptance even more desperately. Suddenly feeling vulnerable under their scrutinizing stares, Lila pushed herself up onto shaky elbows. She winced as she propped herself up off the dirt and took a shaky breath, determined not to let them witness further shame. Just as she prepared to stand fully on wobbly legs, a testament to her enduring spirit, something unexpected broke through the fog of embarrassment. From amidst the throng emerged Jonah McCrae, known as Deadeye, his presence standing out among the laughter and judgmental glances. Instead of mocking or jeering like others around him, he approached Lila with calm respect etched across his weathered face, a stark contrast to those faces filled with scorn. As he extended his hand towards her in an offer of assistance, an anchor amid stormy seas, Jonah whispered softly enough for only her ears, "You're not alone." His sincerity stripped away layers of pain wrapped tightly around Lila's heart. Then came his unexpected gesture. He bowed slightly before handing over his silver medal won earlier during the shooting contest, a prize he earned through skillful precision but offered now as an emblem of solidarity rather than victory over defeat. In that moment, Jonah became a beam of light cutting through clouds covering Lila's emotions. They illuminated warmth where there once was coldness filled with ridicule. The whispers began to fade into hushed murmurs as astonishment rippled through those gathered. They exchanged puzzled glances as they witnessed kindness instead of derision filling this fleeting moment. A display unlike anything they had expected from their usual banter and laughter. For Lila Grant, with every flicker within Jonah McCrae's kind gaze, the weight pressing down on her heart began to lift ever so slightly, transforming what felt like unbearable heaviness into initial threads woven together with hope. As the crowd's laughter echoed around Lila, Jonah McCrae stood at a distance, his gaze fixed on the scene unfolding before him. Known to the townsfolk as Deadeye, he was a one-eyed sharpshooter whose reputation had been built on precision and skill during the Civil War. Though many regarded him with a mix of admiration and curiosity, Jonah preferred solitude, often retreating from the spotlight he had once known. He carried with him scars from both battle and life, having witnessed too much pain and loss to engage with the frivolity that surrounded events like the county fair. Jonah's weathered face betrayed little emotion as he watched Lila fall. Unlike others in the crowd whose laughter felt sharp like daggers aimed at her vulnerability, Jonah felt an unexpected surge of empathy for the seamstress lying in the dirt. He could see her struggle. The embarrassment etched on her features reminded him of moments from his own past when he had been ridiculed for not being whole. The weight of judgment that hung over Lila was not foreign to him. It resonated deeply within his heart. In that moment, Jonah recalled battles fought far away from Grayson, where life or death hinged on quick reflexes and unyielding courage. Those experiences had changed him forever. They had carved out his spirit, while leaving behind a hollowness he constantly battled against. Watching Lila now, he realized that she faced a different kind of war, a fight not just against physical limitations, but against the emotional scars born from relentless judgment. As Lila lay there, struggling to regain her composure while surrounded by onlookers whose laughter rang cruelly in her ears, Jonah felt compelled to intervene. Something stirred within him, a longing to protect someone who appeared so fragile in a harsh world. He took a step forward, positioning himself between Lila and the mocking crowd as if to shield her from their scorn. Jonah approached slowly yet deliberately, each footfall intentional as he crossed through the throng of jeering faces. At that moment, every eye turned toward him, surprise flickering across their features as they recognized who it was making his way through their ranks. The laughter began to quiet down as they wondered what this solitary figure would do next. Once in front of Lila, Jonah crouched down beside her with quiet grace. His one eye, sharp and perceptive, held no pity. Instead, it reflected understanding and respect as he extended his hand toward her. "You're not alone," he murmured softly, allowing only those words to fill the air between them. He watched closely as she blinked back tears, the embarrassment still fresh but beginning to dissipate under the warmth radiating from his presence. In this brief exchange, Jonah offered more than just physical support. He provided acknowledgement of shared pain wrapped in an embrace of kindness that felt warm against the coldness permeating Grayson's judgments. As Lila took hold of his hand with tentative fingers, she noticed how rough and calloused it was, a testament to years spent working with guns rather than fabrics, yet containing within it an unexpected tenderness. With Jonah's assistance, she pushed herself off the ground, rising slowly not just from the dirt, but also from layers of humiliation encasing her heart. Then came Jonah's next surprising gesture. Without hesitation, he reached into his pocket and brought forth a silver medal, the prize he'd earned for his marksmanship earlier in the contest, and held it out towards Lila with genuine humility. "This belongs to you now," he said earnestly. The crowd collectively gasped, not only at his selfless act, but also because they had never seen such defiance against their usual mockery before. Instead of perpetuating humiliation by laughing along with them or turning away altogether, Jonah chose compassion as his guiding principle even amid judgmental eyes. For Lila Grant standing there before him, her heart racing yet full of gratitude, the silver medal became more than just a piece of metal. It transformed into a symbol representing hope where despair once dominated her thoughts. In this moment marked by fleeting kindness amid chaos surrounding them both, it became clear Jonah McCrae saw her not simply as an object worthy of ridicule, but rather someone deserving respect and dignity. The whispers gradually faded into hushed murmurs filled with surprise and contemplation. Astonishment rippled throughout those gathered as they witnessed something extraordinary unfolding right before their eyes. An act of humanity starkly contrasting with all they'd ever known about judgment and laughter. As Lila sat on the ground, her heart racing and her face flushed with embarrassment, Jonah McCrae stepped into the fray, cutting through the laughter and jeers like a knife through the chaos. His determined stride carried an air of quiet authority, drawing attention away from Lila and onto himself. The hush that fell over the crowd was palpable, tinged with curiosity and surprise. They had expected laughter, but were instead met with something far different. Jonah's weathered features reflected a depth of understanding that few could grasp. His single eye, sharp yet kind, locked onto Lila's gaze as he knelt beside her. "You're not alone," he whispered, a promise more than just words. In that moment, he became her shield against the world's ridicule, a protector who recognized her pain without needing to say more. But Jonah didn't stop there. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his silver medal, the prize he earned for his marksmanship earlier in the contest. It glimmered in the sunlight, a symbol of victory that stood in stark contrast to the shame surrounding Lila. With sincere humility, he held it out towards her. "This belongs to you now," he said earnestly. The crowd gasped collectively as they processed this unexpected gesture of kindness. Jonah McCrae, quiet dead-eye, offering his hard-won medal to someone whom most saw only as an object of mockery, was nothing short of revolutionary. It felt as if time had stopped for a moment. Disbelief washed over onlookers along with a wave of realization that kindness could supersede cruelty. Lila's heart fluttered at his words. She blinked back tears as she took in what this gesture truly meant. The silver medal wasn't merely an item of value. It represented respect, support, and acceptance, qualities she yearned for amid the scornful eyes around her. With tentative fingers, she reached out and clasped the cool medal in her palm, feeling its weight ground her back to reality. In that brief encounter, Jonah offered so much more than a medal. He provided Lila with a lifeline, a reminder that not everyone viewed her through a lens tainted by prejudice or judgment. She sensed an unspoken bond forming between them. Here was someone who recognized her struggle not just as an isolated incident, but as part of something larger. A shared understanding forged by experiences that left scars hidden beneath their respective surfaces. As she clutched the medal tightly, its cool surface pressing against her palm, Lila felt warmth spread through her chest where despair once resided. This simple act ignited hope within her soul. Perhaps she could be more than just that poor girl, defined by illness and ridicule. Maybe she could redefine herself through this connection with Jonah McCrae, who saw beyond appearances into the essence of who she truly was. Meanwhile, those gathered began exchanging glances filled with wonder and confusion. Astonishment rippled through them like waves crashing against rocks. For Minnie and Grayson, who had participated in endless mockery or turned away from Lila's plight too easily, the sight before them challenged their assumptions about empathy and kindness itself. Jonah remained steady beside Lila as whispers shifted from jeers towards softer tones of contemplation. Slowly but surely, Hearts among them began changing course from disdain toward reflection upon what compassion could truly mean when faced with another's suffering. They witnessed how one person's act of bravery could ripple outward to affect all around, a stark reminder that humanity still retained flickers even amidst darkness. For Lila Grant, standing there beside Jonah, the weight pressing down on her heart lightened ever so slightly beneath layers woven together by newfound respect laced with warmth where scorn once lingered coldly before. As Jonah knelt beside Lila, placing the silver medal in her palm, the atmosphere around them shifted dramatically. The crowd, once filled with laughter and scorn, now teetered on a delicate precipice of confusion and contemplation. Some spectators, who had relished in Lila's misfortune just moments before, exchanged incredulous glances. They were caught off guard by the unexpected act of kindness witnessed before them. Among the onlookers were several individuals who had led the mocking chorus when Lila fell. They stood there, arms folded and faces twisted into expressions of disbelief as they processed Jonah's gesture. A few whispered harshly to one another, their disdain simmering beneath the surface. "What does he think he's doing?" One man scoffed, his voice barely above a murmur but loud enough for others to hear. "She's not worth that medal. What's next? Making her the queen of the fair?" Their bitter comments reflected a fear of change and unwillingness to accept that compassion could disrupt their established narrative about Lila. They resented Jonah for stealing the spotlight from their jeers, and their anger festered like an untreated wound. To challenge their cruelty with kindness felt like an affront. It was as if Jonah had flipped the script they had grown so comfortable with. "Yeah, look at her," another onlooker chimed in, gesturing dismissively toward Lila. "Just because she caught his eye doesn't mean she deserves any special treatment." The harshness in his tone rippled through the crowd like a small stone thrown into still water, stirring discontent among those who had partaken in the mockery. A few others nodded along, solidifying their shared bitterness towards Jonah's unyielding compassion. Yet, amid this cacophony of disdain, there were also voices stirring with curiosity and admiration. Some spectators, moved by Jonah's action, began to question their own past judgments. Whispers of respect for Jonah McCrae started to replace the laughter. "I didn't think he had it in him," said one woman softly to her friend, her eyes widening as she gazed at Jonah's unwavering support for Lila. Others began sharing stories about him, the quiet sharpshooter who had fought bravely in the Civil War and returned home with more than just physical scars. "He knows what it means to fight against something bigger than yourself," remarked an older gentleman who had watched silently from the sidelines. "Maybe he sees something in her that we've all missed." This shift became palpable as more people began to reflect on the scene before them. The act of kindness resonated deeply. It began to change how they viewed not only Lila but also themselves as members of this community. For many in Grayson, witnessing such courage sparked conversations about empathy and understanding rather than scorn or ridicule. In a world where gossip often replaced genuine connection, Jonah's gesture acted as a catalyst for change. It was a moment that stirred hearts and minds alike, a reminder that not everything is defined by appearances or past mistakes. Instead of succumbing to bitterness like his tormentors, Jonah chose compassion, igniting sparks of hope among those watching. Meanwhile, Lila stood beside her unexpected protector with the medal clutched tightly in her hand. She felt both vulnerable and empowered, a mix of emotions swirling within her heart. As whispers of astonishment danced around her, she realized that she was no longer alone in this sea of judgment. The tide was beginning to turn. As Jonah remained steadfast by her side, Lila's spirit began to rise above the weight of negativity that had enveloped her for so long. Each moment spent beside him transformed fragments of shame into something far brighter, a realization that perhaps she could forge her path anew. With every glance exchanged among those gathered, some filled with softened expressions and others grappling with reflections of their prejudice, Lila understood that this moment marked a turning point not just for herself but for everyone present. The contrast between joy and bitterness hung thickly in the air as people struggled against ingrained perceptions while simultaneously witnessing the power of simple kindness unfold before their eyes. A rare glimpse into what it truly meant to embrace humanity amidst darkness. In the days following the county fair, a transformation began to unfold for Lila Grant. The silver medal, once merely a token of Jonah McCrae's kindness, had become a source of inspiration that sparked hope within her. Each morning, Lila would catch glimpses of the medal glimmering against her sewing table, a reminder of that unexpected moment when compassion replaced mockery. But more than that, it signified the emergence of a friendship that would brighten her previously lonely life. At first, Jonah's visits were infrequent, but as time passed, he found himself drawn to Lila's sewing shop like a moth to flame. The first time he returned, Lila was busy at her desk, stitching delicate patterns into a new dress. The sound of the door creaking open stirred her from her concentration, and when she looked up to see Jonah's familiar figure standing in the doorway, her heart fluttered with surprise and delight. "Mind if I come in?" Jonah asked, his voice steady yet warm as he stepped over the threshold. "Please do," Lila replied, unable to mask the smile spreading across her face. As he settled into a chair across from her workbench, an air of awkwardness lingered for just a moment. Yet Jonah quickly eased into conversation about the fair and his recent practice at the shooting range. A spark ignited between them. Laughter began to fill the space that had once felt so suffocatingly lonely for Lila. Their conversations drifted from marksmanship to tales of life, sharing memories that revealed pieces of their hearts to one another. Jonah spoke of his experiences during the Civil War, stories filled with both heroism and heartache, each tale allowing Lila to glimpse into the burdens he carried within. She shared stories about her struggles with isolation and how she found solace among fabric and thread while crafting beautiful garments, each piece stitched not just with skill but with dreams too long stuffed away. Their time together bloomed into something beautiful as Lila rediscovered fragments of herself she thought she had lost forever. No longer did her limp define her. Instead, it became a part of who she was, a badge of resilience she wore proudly. With Jonah's presence breaking through layers of self-doubt and ridicule that had shadowed her life for so long, she felt lighter and more vibrant. As weeks turned into months, Jonah made it a ritual to visit Lila every Saturday afternoon. He often brought small tokens, a fresh bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked on his walks or bits of fabric he thought she might like for her dresses. Each offering displayed an attentiveness that deepened their bond. With every gift exchanged and every story told, Lila could see that Jonah was as much an outcast in his way as she had been in hers. Lila's shop soon became a sanctuary for both of them, a shelter away from judgment where they could share laughter without fear. Other townsfolk began to notice Jonah's frequent visits but were met with surprise. The whispers once reserved for ridiculing Lila began transforming into moments of respect directed towards Jonah instead. Within their little bubble filled with creativity and acceptance, Jonah encouraged Lila to enter her dresses into local contests. He believed in her talent fervently and wanted others to see what he had discovered. A seamstress whose artistry rivaled any other in Grayson. At first reluctant, Lila took his advice to heart and submitted 2 dresses to be judged during the upcoming Harvest Festival. On judging day, with Jonah by her side offering quiet support as well as joyous encouragement, Lila's spirit soared higher than it had ever before. When the judges announced their decision awarding her first place for originality and craftsmanship, Lila felt joy unlike anything she had known in years. Through it all, Lila began recognizing something deeper blossoming between them, something more than friendship was building within their shared moments. Her heart swelled each time he entered or left her shop. There was a warmth in his presence that filled spaces long felt hollow. The bond they shared became woven into the fabric of their lives, an unmistakable thread of connection, reminding them both they possessed worth beyond others' opinions or judgments, along with unyielding support, kindling hope amidst darkness. Together they faced each day with renewed strength, their friendship illuminating pathways once draped in shadows, allowing both Lila Grant and Jonah McCrae to redefine themselves beyond the confines placed upon them by others. As the weeks rolled into months, Lila and Jonah's friendship deepened with each visit and conversation they shared in her cozy sewing shop. The atmosphere that had once felt heavy with judgment began to fill with laughter and mutual understanding, transforming it into a sanctuary from the world outside. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the window, casting warm golden rays across the colorful fabric strewn about, Lila was busy stitching a new dress when Jonah entered, holding a bouquet of bright wildflowers. "I thought these might brighten your day," he said, a gentle smile illuminating his face. "They're beautiful," Lila replied, taking them from him and inhaling their sweet fragrance. A sense of warmth spread through her heart, and she felt her usual self-consciousness slip away in his presence. "Thank you for bringing me a little piece of nature." "I think they suit you," Jonah said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. "Just like your dresses, they both have a way of bringing color to a dull world." They settled into their familiar routine, Jonah sitting at the small table as Lila continued to work on her latest creation. They talked about everything from sewing techniques to their favorite stories, each conversation peeling back layers of their lives that had long gone unnoticed. "Did I ever tell you about the time I almost missed a shot during the war?" Jonah asked one day, his tone shifting as he began reliving memories that danced along the edges of both pride and pain. "Please tell me," Lila encouraged, her eyes wide with interest. Jonah leaned forward, his expression earnest. "It was during a particularly intense battle. I was so focused on my target that I didn't notice how close the enemy had gotten until one of my comrades shouted for me to look out." He chuckled softly. "I turned just in time to escape an ambush. It taught me not only to aim well, but also to pay attention to what's around me. There's more to a situation than just the target ahead." Lila listened intently, her heart swelling with admiration for his bravery. "You've seen so much," she said softly, realizing how different their lives had been before they found this connection. "And yet here you are, so kind despite everything." "It's easy to be cynical," Jonah replied thoughtfully. "But kindness has always felt like a weapon more powerful than any rifle. You know it can create change where scorn can't." Lila smiled at his words. They resonated deep within her and challenged her own perceptions of herself and the world around her. "I've spent so much time feeling like people only see me as someone to pity or ridicule," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "But since we've become friends, I feel like I'm finally being seen for who I am." "And who is that?" Jonah prompted gently, genuinely curious. Lila hesitated for just a moment, self-doubt creeping into her thoughts, but then spoke from her heart. "I'm a seamstress who loves creating beautiful things. I want my dresses to bring joy to others just as your kindness has brought joy to me." Jonah nodded appreciatively at her honesty, understanding more about Lila than she might realize. "You are so much more than that," he said firmly. "You have strength and resilience I admire deeply, qualities that many people overlook when they focus solely on physical appearances." Their conversation shifted effortlessly between light-hearted banter and profound conversations about their respective pasts, every shared moment knitting their hearts closer together in the fabric of friendship. One rainy afternoon, as droplets gently tapped against the window pane like soft percussion instruments accompanying their chatter, Lila worked on embellishing a dress with intricate lace while Jonah meticulously arranged pieces of fabric on the table beside her. "Do you ever wonder what life would be like if we weren't judged by our appearances?" he asked suddenly, glancing up at her with curiosity. "All the time," Lila admitted without hesitation. "It's exhausting fighting against that kind of perception." She paused for effect before adding thoughtfully, "But maybe we can create something better together, through kindness and compassion." Jonah smiled at her words. It ignited sparks of hope within him too, a reminder that they were no longer alone in this fight against societal ridicule. In those quiet moments spent together filled with laughter or reflective silences, they forged a bond that defied judgment and instead celebrated acceptance. As days turned into weeks and weeks into months, their friendship grew stronger, woven together by shared dreams and understanding beyond what others saw in each of them. With every visit from Jonah, Lila understood more profoundly who she was becoming. She felt accepted not merely as a charity case, but as someone worthy of love and companionship. The profound connection between them illuminated pathways previously shrouded in darkness, each stitch sewn into life reaffirming that there was beauty in vulnerability and strength found within kindness. As the warm light of late afternoon poured into Lila's sewing shop, she and Jonah found themselves enveloped in a comfortable silence, the kind that spoke volumes without needing words. Lila was working on a new dress, her fingers deftly stitching delicate lace while her mind wandered to the transformation of her life since Jonah had entered it. With every creation she crafted, she felt a growing sense of purpose, but it was Jonah's presence that truly ignited her spirit. One day, as they sat together, Lila paused and looked up from her work. "You know," she began hesitantly, "I used to think I'd never find someone who could see me for who I really am. I've spent so long hiding behind my work and avoiding the world outside." Jonah turned his full attention to her. "Is one I steady and kind?" "What do you mean?" he asked gently. "I mean that before you came along, I felt like I was just a cause, a girl to be pitted because of my limp," she continued, her voice steadying as she spoke. "But you look at me differently. You've made me feel like I matter for more than just my struggles." Jonah smiled softly, a warmth spreading through his chest at her words. "You matter because of who you are, Lila. You're strong and talented. You create beauty in everything you touch." He leaned forward slightly, emphasizing his sincerity. "I see you as home. The weight of his words hung in the air between them like a golden thread weaving their hearts together. Lila felt a rush of emotion swell within her as she absorbed what he had said. Home, a word that echoed with warmth and safety, was something Lila had longed for but never truly known. Her heart fluttered in her chest as she realized that Jonah saw more than just her physical appearance. He recognized the essence of her spirit. Home, she repeated softly, allowing the word to settle over her like a cherished blanket. I've never felt like I belonged anywhere until now. Jonah nodded with understanding. We all need someone who sees us beyond our scars, someone who embraces our flaws. He took a deep breath and added, You've created a place within me too, Lila. In that moment, something shifted between them. A connection deepened that transcended friendship and ventured into uncharted territory filled with hope and acceptance. Each shared story and knowing glance had built a bridge between their hearts, allowing them to explore each other's vulnerabilities without fear. As days turned into weeks, their bond blossomed further. They began spending time outside the shop as well. Strolling through Grayson's vibrant streets or picnicking by the riverbank became treasured moments where laughter mingled with soft conversations about dreams for the future. Jonah would often encourage Lila to share her aspirations, what she envisioned for herself beyond the confines of societal judgment. Have you ever thought about opening your own boutique? He asked one sunny afternoon while they sat on the grassy bank, watching the water ripple gently by. Lila laughed lightly at the suggestion but quickly sobered as thoughts swirled in her mind. I've dreamed about it, she admitted quietly, but I always thought it was out of reach, a silly fantasy for someone like me. It's not silly at all, Jonah replied firmly. You have talent that deserves to be shared with everyone. Why not give it a shot? With your skills and creativity, you could create something beautiful. His unwavering belief in her dreams ignited a spark within Lila, a flicker of hope that perhaps she could forge a path towards happiness and fulfillment. The idea of owning a boutique no longer felt like an impossible dream. Instead, it began to take shape as something tangible rooted in possibility. With every moment spent alongside Jonah, every shared laugh or poignant conversation, Lila felt herself transforming into someone more confident and resilient than before. She started to embrace her limp not as a burden, but rather as part of her unique story that shaped who she was. Their friendship flourished in an atmosphere enriched by kindness and understanding. Lila began to see herself through Jonah's eyes, no longer defined solely by ridicule but by strength, creativity, and love. Together they nurtured an environment where acceptance reigned supreme, a place where both could thrive free from judgment. As they continued to navigate life's ups and downs hand in hand, the warmth emanating from their connection fortified their spirits against the harshness surrounding them. With every passing day, Lila realized that Jonah had become more than just a friend. He was someone who made her feel truly at home, the place where love blossomed amidst vulnerability. As the seasons changed in Grayson, so too did Lila Grant. She had come a long way since that fateful day at the county fair when laughter had echoed around her like a dark cloud threatening to swallow her whole. Now, standing in her sewing shop, surrounded by vibrant fabrics and the comforting scent of thread and lace, she felt a newfound strength radiating from within. Jonah's unwavering support had transformed her world, illuminating paths she once thought closed off forever. One crisp autumn afternoon, Lila looked out the window as golden leaves danced in the gentle breeze. Jonah had just arrived, his familiar figure framed against the backdrop of a setting sun. He held an armful of freshly picked apples, their bright red skins shining with promise. I thought we could bake something together, he suggested with a grin that made her heart flutter. As they worked side by side in her cozy kitchen, laughter filled the air, mingling with the sweet aroma of cinnamon and sugar. They shared stories, Jonah recounting tales from his time as a sharpshooter and Lila revealing dreams of opening her own boutique someday. Each word exchanged deepened their understanding of one another and solidified the bond they had formed. You know, Lila said as she chopped apples, I used to think my limp defined me. It was all people saw. She paused, glancing up at Jonah, who listened intently. But you've shown me that I'm so much more than that. Jonah set down his knife and leaned closer. You are more than just your struggles, Lila. You're talented and resilient. His voice held an earnestness that warmed her heart. You create beauty in everything you touch. Lila felt the warmth of his words wrap around her like a comforting embrace. She realized that with Jonah by her side, she was no longer just a girl to be pitied. She was a woman capable of great things, not only worthy of love, but deserving of it as well. Their friendship blossomed into something far deeper than either had anticipated. On evenings spent under the stars or quiet afternoons shared in each other's company, Lila began to see Jonah not just as a friend, but as someone who made her feel truly at home, an anchor in her turbulent world. One evening, while sitting outside on the porch, their hands accidentally brushed against each other. A spark ignited between them, a moment charged with unspoken feelings that hung in the air like electricity. Lila looked into Jonah's eye and felt something shift within her. It was as if all at once she understood how profoundly he cared for her. "Do you ever think about what it would be like if we weren't judged by our appearances?" Jonah asked quietly, breaking the tension but allowing room for reflection. "I think about it often," Lila admitted, her voice earnest as she met his gaze. "But I know now that true acceptance comes from within." She took a deep breath before adding softly, "And I feel accepted when I'm with you." Jonah's expression softened further. He nodded slowly as if processing her words deeply. "You deserve to be seen for who you are, not defined by anyone else's perceptions or judgments." In that moment, Lila felt invigorated by the truth they shared, a truth that transcended mere friendship and ventured into something richer and fuller. She recognized that their connection was rooted not only in kindness but in an understanding of each other's pasts, the scars they both carried blending into a tapestry of resilience and hope. As autumn turned to winter and snow blanketed Grayson's streets, Lila embraced every aspect of herself. Her limp no longer felt like an obstacle but rather part of her story woven together with threads of strength and courage. With Jonah's encouragement fueling her dreams, she finally began sketching plans for her boutique, a place where she could showcase her creations and inspire others who may have felt lost or alone. One cold morning, while sipping hot cocoa together on the porch, Lila turned to Jonah with newfound determination shining in her eyes. "I want to open my boutique," she announced boldly, "and I want you to help me make it happen." Jonah smiled wide, pride radiating from him like sunlight breaking through clouds. "I'll support you every step of the way," he promised, reaching for her hand and squeezing it gently. In that simple exchange, a gesture filled with love and acceptance, Lila recognized how far they had come together amidst the gossip and judgment surrounding them in Grayson. Their bond became an unbreakable force against adversity. Through compassion and understanding, they forged a path forward marked by hope. With each passing day spent alongside Jonah, the warmth kindling within their connection grew brighter. They illuminated pathways previously shrouded in darkness, guiding each other toward a future filled with love and acceptance.